attempts today. Still shaking down. I should finish up the track, at least the small oval by today. Been running around doing a bunch of stuff. But the last time we saw the Gulf livery, GT40, that's one of the set cars, it was making a sound where it sounded like the gears were not meshing. And sure enough, when I opened it up, took the screws off, and it actually has 6 screws. Some of them have 2, some of them have 6. And when I took the screws off, what was happening is this little bracket, you know, a lot of people screw their motor in to the pod. This is a stock Scalextric car, and this bracket right here is loose. So when I took the top off the car, I could see that this motor was pushed forward. And so the gear right there, this is a sidewinder, right? You got your inline, you got with the pinion in the back and the straight. You've got your angle winder where the motor is sitting on an angle, and then you've got your sidewinder. So this is a sidewinder, and what was happening was with the motor forward, because this is broken, this little mount here, they weren't touching. The pinion gear was separated from the spur gear. So that's an easy fix. I'm going to go ahead and super glue this. While I had the car open, I went ahead and spun the front wheels to see how long they'll go. And the answer is nowhere. They'll stop right away instead of spinning freely. So I started to take the wheel off, you know, to pull it apart, to grease it and clean it. And, you know, on these used cars, this is some of the human hair, dog hair, fluff from carpet. Look at this. Who knows what the hell that all is? I don't want to know. God, I hope it's not pubic hair. But it's just, I mean, God, there's a ton of it, right? Just years and years of running these cars on the ground like a lot of people do. And you can see how much crap was wrapped around that axle. Remember how I said the dark blue GT40 was quicker than the light blue? Now we know why. It had all that crap around the axle. So I'm gonna clean it up, I'm gonna oil it up, I'm gonna super glue this bracket in to hold the motor so that the mesh works, and get it back on the track. All right, we got it buttoned back up. We got some bearing lube and some gear lube. There are 2 different things. I've seen a lot of gear lube come in a tube, like a injector, a needle, which looks like a good way to put it on. I just use what I got, which is this jar of gear lube, and I use either a pin or this plastic thing that came with one of my tubes of super glue. I fixed the continuity problem. You know how with the big plug with the adapter, it was top heavy, it kept leaning away. That's what rubber bands are for, my friends. Just rubber band it and it's sitting steady. There's no fluctuation. I can tap it and nothing happens with the light. It's on, it's solid. So let's see how this guy goes and how he sounds now that I got the gear to mesh properly, because of course the super glue dries right away. Oh my goodness. All right, let's see where we can put this. There we go. Just set up. And yes, I do have a new tripod thing since this broke and popped off and ejected and it's stripped out. I got a new head. Let's see what we got here. There it goes. Still not as quiet as the Nighthawk or the GTE. They got a little bit of a growl to it, even with the lube. But it is much quieter than it was when the gears were not meshing. Cool. All right, 1 down and 20 to go. No, and so the next time I see a new motor, you know, in the bag at Action Slot Racing, I'll just go ahead and grab it and try putting that in one of these older cars that, you know, I don't know how old the sets are, or how old the cars are and the motors in them, but based on the track, they've got to be at least 10 years old, maybe 15 to 20, not sure. It is sport track, so I know it's newer than 2000, but past that, I have no idea when the English guy bought these two sets. So it's once again not quiet, not smooth, but it's running. I'll take it, get it around the track, get it back up and running. That's what I'm looking to do today is get the cars that have issues fixed as best I can. All right, I got the Camaro opened up and pulled the axle out. A couple of things. First of all, I shouldn't have popped it back into place, but I did. You know, I see something broken, I fix it. This bearing was up out of the little cradle. You know, these things have crashes and get used, and over time, you know, stuff happens. So all I did was push it back in with my finger, and it's in there. So that was one problem, was the bearing was up, lifting the rear wheel up, probably contacting the body. What I wanted to show you was the knurled knob I keep talking about. If this can focus, yeah, you see those 3 lines all the way over to the left? That's what they count on to hold their stock wheels onto the smooth axle. Just that little ridged part down at the very end. Now this one didn't have a bunch of hair, fur, carpet fiber, whatever. This is fairly clean, but as I mentioned, after the kid wrecked it the first time, the week, those wheels, which I kind of just pressed back on, have not stayed on. So I'm going to go ahead and put super glue on the knurled part and put the tires back on, and hopefully that will keep them on. And if I have to change the tires, I won't take the axle out. Once again, this is a stock car, so I don't mind making a somewhat permanent change to it. I'm fine with that. The other thing, if you wonder why that GT40 had brackets on the motor and why some people screw their motor down, look at this. Once again, the stock Scalextrics. See that? See how much movement that is? How that rocks back and forth? That's not good. You don't want your motor moving. That's why people screw them in and or hot glue them down, or have brackets like the GT40 did, which once again, that's a stock Scalextric car. So is this, but this one doesn't have brackets to hold it in. Well, it does, but they're not working very well. As you can see, they're there. But, you know, I can rock this back and forth, no problem. No bueno. All right, we got them fixed. The wheels are on permanently now. They're close in, there's no slop. Before, the wheels were moving back and forth, left and right. You don't want that, you don't want slop. And before, because the engine was rocking back and forth, there wasn't tight, positive gear mesh like there is now. And I went ahead and put a drop of oil, liquid bearings. I want to show you the difference with those. I forgot to show you with the GT40. But remember when I first spun the axle, it was frozen, it had all that hair. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or 1,000, 2, 2,000, 3, 3,000, 3,000. It could do better, but 3,000, 1,000, 2, 2,000, 3, 3,000 is better than before where it did 1 revolution and stopped. So I've got the same situation with this car. The front axle, just turn it, and it stops, 1 revolution, even though there's no dog hair. So I'm going to go ahead and grease it up and see what that does. 1 drop, just 1 drop of liquid bearing. All right, so all I do is put a drop of, once again, I got liquid bearings. This came in the toolbox that Jeff sent me, and we'll see what the difference is just after 1 drop on each side. 1,000, 2, 2,000. All right, so 2 seconds instead of 3. 1,000, 2, 2,000. 1,000, 2, 2003, almost 3,000. So 2 to 3 seconds, whereas before it would literally go one rotation and stop. So yeah, just a simple drop of oil goes a long way. And of course, the freer the wheels are, the better the car will perform. You know, if they're free from any obstructions and dirt and hair and whatever crazy stuff you find on these old used cars. I think it's kind of cool. I really do. So I don't mind taking nasty, disgusting hair out of a car. The motor, where's that at? Okay, what happened, you see what had happened was, every good story in the South starts that way in America. This black bracket that I pointed out, it's broken. You see how there's a hole there? The black plastic bracket usually goes up and pushes into that hole to hold the motor in place. Here's the other side, you see. It has like a little U-shaped bracket. So I went ahead and put a drop of super glue there, over here, where it's still there, and then over here where it's broken, I super glued that to the end bell. And now the motor does not move. And that gives me that nice positive gear mesh. So this should be a lot quieter when it runs on the track now, because that motor's not moving forward and backwards like it was before. A couple of simple fixes that will help the car run a lot better. All right, we got Camaro button back up on an impromptu jack stand, which is the stripped out top of the, I really should be using, I don't know, I'm not using the new one, but anyway. That's my way to do hands-free, because my left hand's on the controller here. That'd be funny if the tire caught the little plastic piece and went running down the track. It's moving. It's moving with the torque. That's cool. So there it is. It works. One last thing. Make sure oh no, it's stuck in the little holder, great. Make sure you leave the wiggle thing in there. One of the prior videos I did, I talked about how important it is to be able to move the chassis a little bit from the body. So you tighten the screws down all the way and then back off just like a quarter turn to half a turn until you can wiggle the body back and forth. Like the motor was wiggling, you want the body to wiggle in the chassis, the chassis, you want the chassis to wiggle in the body the same way that the motor was wiggling before I glued it down. So the motor you want to stay put, the body and the chassis you want to have some movement inside. That helps it corner better when you have that free floating going on. So that's it. I got 2 cars are on the bench today, and I got 2 cars fixed. I found a cracked tire, like a split tire, in the Caddy, one of my favorite new cars. So that's why I put, or was it the Mercedes? Because I put them over here getting a new tire, because I'm warped like that. Yeah, there you go. It's the Mercedes, not the Caddy, right there. You can see the split, which is a shame because they're cool looking tires. I like the tread, I like the, come on, focus. 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 There you go. Anyway, yeah, I'm crying because I really like these tires, but yeah, obviously that needs to be replaced. So if you remember, I got a spare set of tires with the big order for the Caddy. That's where I was thinking Caddy. But the Caddy tires are okay. They're fine. I'm not going to use them for this, the spare tires. I'll go ahead and use those on the Mercedes since that one has a split in it. So there you are. Get back there. Get back there, you little... All right, I'm going to get back to the track now. It's still kind of cool out. It hasn't reached peak heat yet. So... but it has been, you know, getting up into the hundreds, and we've had some rain that's broken the heat a little bit, but got the wires for the terminals. You can see the wires all run. My buddy Piot, the guy who built the shelf for me and built the table, he didn't come last Sunday, so that's why it's been a week, 2 weeks. and the terminal blocks are still up on the top because he hasn't gone and put them on the bottom. He's going to drill the holes and install those terminal blocks. But I got all the wires for it, so that's ready. There's going to be one block over there, buried in that mess. You can barely see it. And there's a block down there, right there where that mess of wires is. Yeah, underneath it you can see there's a block. And then also down at the other end, there's a terminal block and wires run to it. So it's coming together. We're getting there. We're getting where we need to be. To get this thing with the jumpers, and hopefully that solves a lot of the problems. I located the dead track here, which, as I mentioned, is the bank curve. I'll be working on that today. And then over here on the other side, that's dead track right after the little quarter track. So I'll mess with that, mess with the connections like I showed you in the other video I did, which I haven't posted yet because it's not done yet because the track's not working yet. So this is just a little quick fix, a couple of cars I had on the bench, get them back in the rotation. But most of today will be spent tweaking, repairing track instead of cars. So I was running the cars around the new oval, which when you watch the big video, you'll see I got the little oval working over there, and I started to run cars around it. And the Ninco Anglewinder, once again, the Anglewinder, you see it's on an angle, made this sound like the gears weren't meshing. You know, it just went, so I brought it over here to the workbench, you know, opened it up. And the first thing I did was just, you know, hang it off the side like I did for, you know, tire true testing, whatever. Is it getting power? Are the, you know, the little modules up there that touch the braids and bring it back to the motor okay? And it ran great. There's no problem. You got good gear mesh. Everything's fine. Now, when I moved it up and you put it under load, watch what happens. See it? The motor is moving up and out of its mount. So what was good gear mesh isn't good gear mesh now. So when it's not under, you know, the torque of starting the car versus the magnets, the motor will sit in its little cradle. But because it's just pushed down in there, on this side too, right there, you can see the black brackets. It's easier to use a tool. The black brackets there, right there, they're holding the motor in. And you can see just from trying to move the car those few inches, the motor had popped out of the little holder. Now the guy who owned the car before me had put hot glue. You see all that stuff right there, like there had been a magnet up there. In fact, the magnet is out. There you go. There it is right there. Okay, so the hot glue apparently isn't a good long term. I used the super glue instead because that magnet came out and that was sitting on top of my axle, which wouldn't help the car run. And also here, the motor was hot glued in right there, and you can see it lifts up and out. Okay, so I pushed it back into its mounts, but under the torque of trying to move the car, it lifts out again and takes away the pinion from the crown gear. I called the other one spur gear, I called this crown. The reason is the teeth come over the edge. You see how that's like a dish? So a spur gear, this is a crown gear too. All right, so I was trying to show you a spur gear, which is just flat, but that's also a crown. You see how it looks like a crown, or to me a pie crust, like an apple or cherry pie crust. You see how it has this edge there, and the gears come out. A spur gear on the first car I showed you, I guess was the GT40, it's flat. It doesn't have the ridge. So where the pinion hits the crown gear, it's a good enough mesh, once again, unless this motor is under torque and then it wants to twist and pop out of those two. So same thing I did with the Camaro. that had the broken, or no, it was the GT40, had the broken bracket. I'll go ahead and use super glue instead of hot glue. I don't have a hot glue gun, but obviously it didn't hold up over time because the magnet came out and the motor is coming up, lifting up out of its mount and breaking the contact with the spur and the crown. The crown and the pinion. So just wanted to show you that too. You know, whenever you have that gear noise, you're like, oh, it's not meshing. Well, that's why it's not meshing. So that's the second car I worked on today where the motor is lifting up out of its mount. First time because the plastic piece was broken. This time because hot glue wasn't sufficient to keep it in over however many years. All right, got the Bulldog car in the pit garage. Actually the home garage, not the pit garage, because we're not at the races. A couple of things I wanted to address. I had looked at this front axle inside the car, and it seemed to have a little wobbly wobble. So I took it out. One, I had painted the wheels to make it black to make it match the car. I was lazy and stupid, and I painted the axle. That just makes it not smooth, right? The metal is smoother than the paint, and adds weight, and it literally could be milligrams of weight, but why would you add weight instead of taking weight away from a race car? So I completely stripped it down. I took the motor out. I took all the magnets out. This magnet, which was in the back, I mean, it's substantial. And it was back here underneath the axle. And while I understand, you know, what magnets do and how they hold the car down, I just think under the axle is the weirdest place to put it. I mean, this is metal, and, you know, when that's over top of that, you can see it wants to, I would think that would slow the axle down, being over top of a magnet like that. So, you know, I haven't researched it out. I need to learn more about magnets and where to put them in the car and all that. But for right now, all I'm doing is cleaning this up. I've taken all that hot glue out already, and there's more. I'm going to go hit this inside of this body with like Goo Gone, you know, like a cleaner. That's what I was going to use on the Porsche, but I didn't have to. But I'm going to have to use it here because there's, you know, hot glue residue all over. I'll pop this magnet out. This is the last magnet. Although I could see where that might help. In front of the motor, it's not interfering with the motor, it's not interfering with either of the axles. I can see where that actually might be a good place for a magnet, kind of in the center of the car, and help it. But I wanted, at the suggestion of one of our viewers who wrote in the comments, you know, take the magnets out. Basically, you feel the car getting loose before it gets loose, which gives you time to correct it. So I told you back after I painted this car from the Gulf livery to the Georgia Bulldog colors, that this was going to be my experimental car. And when I want to mess around with stuff and take it apart and put it in pieces like I'm doing now, this is the car I'll do this. So I'm not going to open up the GTE and the MG Lola Nighthawk and start doing this to it. First of all, they don't have, you know, they only have the stock magnets from the factory. They don't have hot glue or super glue or any of that crap in them. They don't have a hot motor or anything like that. So this is the car that I am going to experiment. Different tires. I'll get some silicone tires. That's one of the quick slicks everybody likes. I want to try them on this car. They sell a 50,000 RPM motor for this car, and it's insane. And I know I won't be able to control it because I can't control the 21,000 RPM motors yet. But I am going to open the drag strip I told you about, and I think a 50,000 RPM motor would probably be good. I know it's more, in real life, it's more about torque than RPM, but maybe on the top speed, 1/4 mile for a dragster, it might be different. We'll find out. Anyway, you know, motor is, I want to say $20 or less than $20 for a motor for one of these cars. So, you know, experiment. I have no idea what the RPM is on that motor that came with it. Probably at some point I'll get a way to find that out, since I'm into the hobby so deep at this point. But anyway, yeah, this is the car all exploded. I will experiment with different pinions and crowns, you know, different ratios. See what runs best on my big track once the big track's running it together. And as I said, right now I'm going to go goog on this thing to get rid of all the residue, because once again, that's just extra weight. It's not doing anything at this point. It's not holding anything down. It wasn't holding the motor down. The motor came right out. So it wasn't even doing the job that it was in there for. So this is the Ninco Anglewinder torn down to the chassis. And so almost demagnetized. I have that one left, which I'll take out.